Hey, party people, I wanted to take a moment before this episode gets rolling to really thank Lindsay for coming on and doing such a wonderful interview. She has such a good story to tell. She has an even more wonderful book, Spirit Vigilante, and you can purchase that book by going to thespiritvigilante.com and checking it out. So thank you very much, and here is Lindsay. Spirit Vigilante.
Hello, I'm Lindsay. I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is September 6th, 2015.
Ooh, it's like almost a year. Okay, I am Carl. I am alcoholic, addict, whatever you want to call me, all the above. And my sobriety is August 22nd, 2014. This is SoberPod.
Soberpod.com. Yeah, SoberPod, keep it authentic, no facades. If it's real, then you know it's ours. Welcome.
SoberPod is a podcast. Oh my gosh, I just messed that up. Hold on. So SoberPod is a podcast dedicated to the idea that one addict or alcoholic helping another is crucial to building a life in recovery. We are not professionals, and the opinions expressed in this episode are all derived from the book 366. Actually, not in this episode. Most of everything in this episode is derived from your book, actually, Lindsay, Spirit Vigilante. And as always, stay active, stay sober. So there again, I filled in the blanks. So if you guys didn't recognize the voice, because I didn't recognize the voice, it's the first time I've been here. Lindsay wrote a book, Spirit Vigilante, and of course, in all the worlds of connections and recovery, I got an email to suggest to read the book, of course, as we all do, and then of course it's available on Kindle if you are a subscriber, which is like the Kindle Unlimited. You can access the book, and it's great and it's wonderful. And if you're not a member of Kindle Unlimited, you can actually buy the book. And of course, all that stuff will be in our show notes, so check it out. So we'll have links to Amazon, and you can go there and get it all for yourself. So I am a member of Kindle Unlimited, and I immediately downloaded the book and started reading. So I wanted to hear Lindsay on. I think she's got a really great, unique take on her sobriety, recovery, life living, and there's some things I want to make sure that I touch base on here, because everybody has like those little audio biographies, or whatever it is, like your little back jacket copy kind of stuff, and I don't really care about your back jacket copy, but you might, right. But I don't, because I was reading the book and I came across this. This is what you wrote. It said, "Why trust me?" Right? And this is from your book. And it says, "I am an expert in health psychology, and I educate individuals and groups in areas such as nutrition and lifestyle modifications." Yogic, is that how you say it? Yogic?
Yes.
So it's yogic philosophy, general wellness, and spiritual principles of healing. I am an adjunct professor at American University for the Department of Health Studies with a specialization in behavior change. I also operate a wellness studio for holistic healing in Rockville, Maryland. More importantly, I have lived this journey. I can sit with you in the trenches of battle because I know your pain. The only way for me to make sense of what I have overcome is to share with you. There are many resources out there, so I sincerely thank you for choosing this one. So I think that should have been on the back jacket. But either way.
Next time.
Yeah, next time. So Lindsay, first of all, welcome. And then as I want to definitely take the journey backwards to understand, where you were, again, what happened, what it was like, and blah, blah. But I also want to know, really, your motivations for writing the book. I think it's really important that, I also wrote a book, which, by the way, we'll probably read at the very end of this. I have
yes, so I got yours too.
Yeah. So it's a little different than your book. Your book doesn't have enough cussing, as far as I'm concerned.
That's because of my mom, Carl.
Yeah, right. It's funny. My sponsor was when I was first my second sponsor, the one that would read this book. He basically was he was trying to talk me out of the cuss words. Right? He's like, dude, because I gave him the first 3 months that I had written. He was like, dude, you got to take the cuss words out. And I was just like, no, dang it, no. Yeah. My inner child was screaming. Okay.
Right.
So tell me something about your history. Not to get too into Drunkalaga. I think you have much more powerful story. And let me just say, like, I want to, as I was reading your book, it really like struck me a lot. Like what was going through my head, there were certain things going through my head almost every time I was reading, every chapter I jump into, I was thinking like, this reminds me of something. This has a feel to it. This has a vibe. And so I was like, so there's a lot of quotes. And then I was just like, I was like looking for like, what does this remind me of? And it reminded me of this. Those who danced were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. And that's from Friedrich Nietzsche, right? And then I was like, but that wasn't it. I was like, there was something. And then a couple of days went by and I was like, oh, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Apple ad, the Think Different copy. Yeah. So that audio from that, they said, here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward, while some may see them as crazy ones, we see genius, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do, right? And so that was totally what I thought of the whole time. I was like, because you seem to be in your book very inspirational and very focused on your mission, and that's what I want to really get to. So yes, I understand you did a lot of drugs, you did a lot of stuff, and you did a lot of drinking, right, etc. So talk about that, but let's get into the mission.
I'd love to.
Okay, so tell me, where did it start? Tell me your first drink. What was your first drink?
My first dream?
Drink.
Drink.
Yeah.
My first drink, gosh, probably 14 or 15, high school age. It felt like magic. I finally understood how adults get through life. I could talk to people. It took the edge off. I lived very perfectionistically and type A, and was always I think I came out of the womb just stressed out and worried and anxious. So it felt like magic that I could finally just let go of control. Mm-hmm. And it's not that every day since then I was drinking 24 hours or anything like that, but I just got as much of it as I could whenever I could from that point as appropriate. You have the ebbs and flows. And then in college was college, so plenty of opportunity there, but I still had the guardrails on as far as I need to get good grades. So it didn't set me too far back. Once I got out of college, though, without those guardrails, going out into the wild and not knowing anything about who I was and not seeing an A+ every quarter semester to tell me I was okay, that's when things really got crazy for me personally. Yeah.
So, I mean, what kind of damage do we talk in terms of crazy? Is it like more, because there's like, there's external crazy and there's internal crazy.
Of
like,
course.
you know what I mean? It's like, so, and of course we're saying crazy, like, like it's insane. It literally is. It's like, it's not normal behavior. It's what, it's not what my neighbors are doing. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what kind of crazy are we talking about? What kind of trouble? Good trouble, bad trouble?
Bad trouble. I still kind of looked like my neighbors and like I was doing okay, right? Mm-hmm. At the same time, I was living this double life, and those really close to me did know what was going on and were impacted. But I had a job with the federal government. I had all the boxes checked as far as what things should look like in your 20s, and that's when I kind of there were outside consequences. There were plenty of rock bottom moments. It was more the soul, the inside soul stuff, though. Mm-hmm. And what were those outside consequences? Just for a quick run through, classic DUI at 21, which I didn't see as a problem. That was not even a blip on the radar as far as maybe I have a problem. I just was unlucky that day, like who doesn't have a DUI? Come on.
Yeah. Most people who have issues are like, they blame it like, oh, I should have turned left instead of right that day. Or like, you know what, I really shouldn't. Yeah. But they never like really back it up and go like, wow, I probably shouldn't have been drunk when I was driving.
Oh, no. That was just had nothing to do with it. I mean, I shouldn't have been leaving Clyde's on Half Price Wine Night. Yeah. That's right across from the police station. But that was the only thing I did wrong, really.
No, yeah, really. You should have just stayed for the whole night. I mean, why leave early is the whole problem. Yeah.
And to be fair, Uber wasn't I don't think it was around back then at all. And if not, it wasn't how it is now. Yeah. But yes, so I continued to drive drunk and all of that. It did not faze me in the least. And a few other things. I smashed through a parking gate once in the middle of the day because I was trying to get to the next brunch spot and thought it would be a really good idea to have Grey Goose in my mimosas because I saw someone else doing it, and just little things like that, blacking out all the time, driving drunk all the time, calling out of work hungover. My relationships were struggling, shocker. Just living pretty immorally and in a way that I didn't recognize in myself because I was raised with a pretty good moral compass and conscience. So
yeah, it's funny. I don't think that I was raised with a good moral conscience. I mean, but I don't know where it comes from. You know what I mean? Like I wish I did. Maybe I could have chased it when I was younger. The fact is like, my sponsor John, who died, he would always talk to me about flexible morality. Right. And it's like, and it's great to have somebody kind of describe that to you and we talk and to have a conversation about those things. It only happens in recovery. When was the, it was never a time like when you were like drinking and you were sitting around the campfire and people talking about flexible morality. It just doesn't happen. Right.
Not typically.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it depends on your friends, I guess, but
I wouldn't remember it. Even if it did, I wouldn't remember. So
exactly. Right. Yeah, that's the funny part. So I guess there you have a lot in your book. You talk a lot about your path and your stories kind of intertwined. But I think one of the things is it's always kind of reinforced with like the positive side. Like a lot of the times when you're talking about your negative, impacts, you're always trying to I think back it up with but here's what it is today. Like here's how I overcame that, or here's the things I look out for because of those things, or it's that kind of stuff. So talk to me about your last drink in how that happened.
Okay, my last drink was actually the day after a really bad episode, and I thought it might be my last drink for a while. So I very much cherished it. But the day before that, what happened was there was a 4th of July party at my mom's house. You probably read a lot of this. So
I did. I mean, but everybody listening has not, as all I'm saying. So I hope that they do, but
you're hearing it again. So thank you for listening to my story twice. Yeah. But so it was a 4th of July party, and I drove there and it was about an hour away at my mom's house. I had my little Yorkie in the car, my baby, and was on the phone with a boyfriend. And at the boyfriend, I use that term loosely around that time of my life, but he was like he had it up to here with me. I was cheating on him, but I was also at that point where I was like, just so desperate for love. Please don't leave me. Please don't leave me. I don't know what's wrong with me. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get help. Just that desperation for any kind of outside validation. And so he's like, so are you going to drink at your mom's at this party? And I said, I might just have one or two. I might not drink at all. I don't know. We'll see. And really thought that I meant that in my mind and started drinking. Spoiler alert. I did not just have one or two. And just kept drinking. And then the next thing I remember was waking up the next morning at home, an hour away from my mom's with my dog in my bed and my car outside, and just had this, and then apparently a bunch of texts and missed calls from my whole family, because apparently I left when it was still daylight outside and no one knew where I went, and they knew I was really drunk, and my mom was praying the whole time, So I got up, head in my hand, just hungover, looked in the mirror, and had this little tiny moment of clarity where I looked into my eyes and just thought, who are you? What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
You put your dog in danger. This sounds horrible. I wish that it would have been the hundreds and thousands of other people on the road that I had put in danger previously. But for some reason, the thought that I could have hurt my dog was just this revelation to me. And I just had completely lost myself. And I don't know where this moment came from. I think, we call it grace. I see it as a much needed and much awaited moment of clarity where I just was like, I need help. And I had already been seeing a therapist at the time to assuage my boyfriend's angst about my drinking and saying I'm trying to get better. And week after week, I would go to the therapist and tell him about whatever chaotic drinking story I had. And he very gently said, do you think maybe the alcohol...
Maybe it might be
contributing? No, that has nothing to do with why I'm here.
Yeah. I think I got that from the book, that you really fought the idea a lot. Like, you really struggled with that internal decision to say, am I or am I not? You know what I mean? It was like one of those, like, and I did too, by the way. That's why I read into it, because I was in treatment when I was 15, and then in and out of the rooms after that, right? Because it's the only, every time things got bad, I would turn to, maybe that's what I need to do. Mm-hmm. And then, but I always wrestled with the idea that I am actually one of them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you did the same thing. How did that work out? I mean, internally, like, what was the struggle like for you? Like, I would really, like, it's funny, like, I always want to know, like, what your actual thoughts are day to day. Like, I wish there was like a day list of like what really transpired internally to turn you towards like, I may be one of those. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I always wish I knew more, but yeah, go ahead. So, how did you resolve that? Like, when was the time when you were like, okay, like, maybe I am one of them? Like, where was that moment?
I had to do a lot of research.
Wait, recovery research as in drinking, or actual book research?
Both.
Okay, that's a good
Literally
idea.
both.
Yeah.
I was talking about drinking research, but also the research of, am I an alcoholic statistically, and all of those things, and what even is an alcohol? How do you define that? In my mind, it was, how dysfunctional does your life have to be for you to be an alcoholic? And that's what wasn't aligning for me, because I had a job, I had a car, I had a life, I had, I could take care of myself outwardly. And so what transpired in that realization was, I learned after all of my diligent research that I could not control my drinking. After I take a sip, I cannot, and do not want to anyway, control how much more enters my mouth. Mm-hmm. And I believe I never will be able to do so. I just think it's that, allergy of the mind or body. My body's different. Some people are allergic to peanuts, and they're never not going to be, at least in 2024, maybe in the future. But as of today. And so I just will never be able to drink or take any drugs, for that matter, any addictive substance or non-addictive substance that might be dangerous, safely. And so once I came to that, and how did I come to that? Just trying and trying and trying and not being able to succeed. And very, very gently, my therapist and I, well, let's just try this, right? And I talk about this in my book a lot. Let's just experiment. I'm not signing a contract that says I'm not going to drink ever again, or not. I'm not even saying I'm not going to drink for a week. I'm just, let's try out not drinking and see how life goes with that. Maybe things will improve, maybe they won't, but I'm going to at least try it. And I really felt this crossroad moment in my life of this voice entering my head. And it was around the same time of that mirror realization of who are you? And I had this whole narrative of I'm just damaged, I'm destructive, I'm a tornado running through everyone's life, I'm beyond help, no one knows how hard my life is, just that whole victim mentality. But there was this tiny, tiny little baby percent of me that something came in my head of, but what if you could get better? What if you could be healthy? And I had never considered that option before. I just thought I was doomed. And that little bit was enough, I guess enough of me wanted to try and see instead of just kill myself, which I was doing either slowly or quickly. You know, I was stuck in that suicidal ideation all the time anyway. So it's like, let's just try life. Let's just try, which was, I'm making it sound easy. That was a really tough decision.
Making it sound easy. But you are. I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty easy to just try. Yeah.
Well, but it was a tough decision, especially for me. You know, it's this weird dichotomy of I'm this train wreck, but at the same time, somebody who wants to have it all together. And so it's like, what if I try and I fail? What if that was the scariest thing? What if I try to get better and try to get healthy and I just can't? But I won't know unless I'll try.
Exactly. You know, it's funny. Like when I was in elementary school, I had to bring a notebook back and forth from my mother to my teacher, and they both had to like write about what Carl's day was like, and and all this other stuff. And every report card always said like, Carl has potential, but he just doesn't try, right? And again, I was distracted, and I was but again, I was raised as I had a lot of trauma growing up, so. But back then they didn't really identify that kind of stuff. So,
right.
But that's the thing. So I was definitely off the rails all the time. Like there was never a time. And I really identify with what you're talking about in terms of what if I just tried, because at 42 years old, I was like done, and I was suicidal, and I was sitting. If I would have had a gun, I would have used it on myself, no doubt. And that's like scary thought. I really would have. But as a good alcoholic does, I was like, well, I'll just drink instead.
Yeah.
Which is, and again, sometimes when I hear people say, "Oh, I'm grateful I'm an alcoholic," I think of that moment, right? I'm grateful that I had alcohol to drink, because if I didn't, I would have killed myself. So, but let me just say, as I sat there and prayed for release, etc., and then and I crawled back into the rooms. That little thought that you're talking about, it did come to my mind. I was like, well, first of all, I went to that first meeting, and then I drove home in silence with the radio off, crying, not crying because it was like I was happy, not crying because I was necessarily sad. I was just hugely disappointed, because I was like, fuck, now I got to be with these people. Like I wanted nothing to do with them. Right. I tried my whole life to get away from this problem. Right. And the fact is, like, it was with me regardless. Right. So did you go back to the rooms? Did you go into recovery traditionally, 12-step stuff? Did you do that?
I did. And it's so interesting what you just said about crying all the way home, because I just came from a meeting, and we were talking, the speaker kind of led on their first meeting experience. And so I shared mine. And after that meeting, I don't remember anything that was said, but after that meeting, I just sat in my car and cried. And it was the only time in my life where I could not really pinpoint why I was crying. And I think it was a mix of, oh my God, I'm exactly where I should be. And
and I really just said everything about it.
And oh my God, I'm exactly where I should be. Right. So it's the defeat part of it, but then the relief that comes in that desperation, the gift of desperation.
Yeah, and I think at one point, and I did highlight it in my Kindle app, which is basically, you said something along the lines of like, you were at this resignation point, right? You just kind of like, and I get it at the same rate. It's like, but then at the same rate, you were like, but there was hope in there. And actually, that's what your book is really all about, by the way. There's just so much hope in it. And so that's what was really more attractive to it, because you're always focused. You're always turning yourself towards the solution. Like, what? Yes, it's this, but why? And what can reinforce this behavior, et cetera. So, for me, I think one of the things I did is, I read the big book, and as and I hadn't read anything other than a computer manual in like 15 years.
Of
and
course,
so,
yeah.
so I was reading this thing, and one of the things I did, which is I was like, what if, right? What if, like, what I'm reading is true for the first time in my life? What if this is possible? And because I was always like, it was for them, never for me. Like, it'd be good for you guys, but like, I don't think that it's good. It's not going to fit for me. You know what I mean? And maybe you are like low enough that maybe this is going to be good for you, but I wasn't low either. I pulled into my first meeting at 42 in my BMW 3 Series, right? I had a $500,000 home, which is now worth $1 million. Just give it 10 years, and the fact is like I had a job. I didn't have a job actually. I had left my agency, and I was I thought I'd go home and not drink anymore, and actually went home and doubled down. And so I thought I'd quit my agency so I could get sober, right? Like, I thought I'll do that, and like, because maybe it was the work that was the problem. I was at those kinds of solutions. Maybe it was the job. Maybe it was those types of things. And the fact is, like, I doubled down, and so I had to drink more. I had to do more research, quote unquote.
Yes.
So I thought, what if this actually could work? And then the hard part comes, right? Is like, you have to kind of give yourself over to it. And I think that's what you're trying to do in your book, is you're really trying to let people know, like, hey, like, you're the light, not the lighthouse, right? Like, you're trying to show the direction of like, hey, this is where to go, right? These are the things that you can do or try that will help along your journey if you're considering this, and I think it's really compassionate in that way. So talk to me about like, what was your drive to, I mean, I know that's part of why you wrote the book, but where's that impetus? Like, where does it come into your mind? Like, I'm going to write the book, because a lot of people don't. They have the idea, but a lot of people never follow through. So what was your idea and follow through? What made that happen?
So I think the idea had been living in my head for a long time. I've always had kind of this, as I learned recently, I didn't think of myself like this, but a kind of teacher, leader demeanor, even in the throes of
and a rhymer and a poet, by all means.
That too. I do have a book of poetry. But so I think that I lost my track of thoughts. Sorry. Which happens a lot. No, don't apologize. And I speak slow sometimes because I'm processing. But even in the throes of alcoholism, I find notes from the past of how I was going to teach other people how to live. Just little tips and tricks about things, and oddly enough, wellness things. There was something in me trying, I was trying my best. And so I had been writing for a really long time. That was what got me through drinking and recovery. Like you said, the drinking, you didn't say it this way, but it served a purpose until it didn't. It was a survival mechanism for us in a weird way. And so with that was also my writing. I didn't write when I was drunk, but the next morning, at my day job, I'd be rattling off on my keyboard. I still have this long 100-page Google Doc of my ramblings. So that was a way to just put something in black and white of what the heck is going on in my head and my heart. And so I've always been a writer. I've journaled since I was young, and always had that loose idea of a book. And then what actually made it come to fruition, I was working in, and I won't give away what the incident was, but I had a very traumatic incident happen to me a few years ago, where at the same time as other things happening in my life. And what happened at that time was, with all those pillars gone, something in me said, there's no excuse anymore. All that's left to do right now is write. That's that you have the time, among other things. At that time in my life, I call it the bare minimum. I think there's times in your life where you can only do the bare minimum. And for me, that was meetings, showering, eating, drinking, but just don't stop. Just don't stop. Just keep going. And so part of that became writing. And I made a decision. I started joining all of these writing workshops. I took a trip to Scotland for a writing conference and came up with a book proposal and said, I'm going to do this. And so that was in September of 2022. So it was almost exactly 2 years from the idea of this is going to be an actual thing that comes to form from my head to paper. And I did it. Wouldn't you know? So that was how that transpired.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing to be able to sit down and kind of take those thoughts and formulate them into a into a little package in order to be able to offer it to others. And I think it definitely comes across. And by the way, the traumatic event that you talk about in the book, which I'm not going to give away either or talk about, but the fact is like my heart drops at those moments, right? Like where I understand it. So I guess that's for everybody else to dig in and read the book, but to understand where you're at that time really makes a lot of sense, right? Because but my book, by the way, would not even be here either if it wasn't for my sponsor dying of 8 years, who I so it was a way for me to I'd always had the idea in my head, but I never I never had a reason, I guess, or one of the things is, when he died too, I realized like he was never going to he's never going to call me ever again,
Wow.
And I was just like, oh, so I spent like the next 6 months grieving, and I didn't know how to grieve, by the way. So that's what the book allowed me to do. The book allowed me to take his lessons, kind of translate them, like, because I learned them, right? And then just try to regurgitate them back onto paper form. I don't know if I ever really did all of his his thoughts or philosophy justice, right? Or his life justice for that matter. But I definitely dedicate the book to him and like what he provided, right? Which was like, he provided love and a clear direction on how to live my life. And like, that was amazing to me that you could do that for somebody else, and I think that's like, I think one of the things about, when you start to write this book, it's like you have that desire, right? To say like, I am at my lowest of lows, but I'm going to make my way through this, and I'm going to make something out of this, and that's really inspirational. That's like in real directional, and it's stuff that, again, more hope, right? So I think you're really trying to provide that. So, which, by the way, brings me to the reading for November 22nd,
Yes.
and we could talk about it afterwards. But here, you want to hear my cussing? Yes, you do.
Yes, I read your cussing this morning, but I want to hear it. I do. Yes, but I want to hear it audibly as well.
So yeah, the audibly part is where I'm like, where I say "fuck," right? So here it is, November 22nd. It says, "Fuck this one day at a time crap." Fuck is all I can think about. It says, "It sucks ass, doesn't it? Some days we simply have to grit our teeth and bear the result of a totally shit day. I envision myself tied to the ship's mast in a heavy storm and early sobriety on days like these. It's like the end of the movie in The Truman Show, where Jim Carrey's character ties himself to the boat that is getting pummeled by the giant waves. Still, he shouts at God, declares and challenges that he will keep going, and even asks for more. Some days, our days or weeks in sobriety, will be just like that. The trick is not to give up. And not giving up is all great, but the even bigger trick is to have the balls to ask for more." I mean, I don't know. What are girl balls? What's the equivalent of girl balls?
I have a whole diatribe on this.
Yeah. So reflections. Are things getting rough? Are you prepared to not give up and ask for more at the same time? Daily challenge. Go to bed, take a nap, relax, but don't give up. And it kind of sounds like the exact moments like right before you start writing a book. You know what I mean? Which I think is kind of like probably why I wrote this at the time, because I definitely was having a hard time with the grief and getting overwhelmed at times. And then I needed to get up, right? It's like last 9 months have been pretty hard for me too. So I've been like, about 3 weeks ago, I sat down and I wrote on a Post-it note, just those words, get up, right?
Get up.
Yeah, because that's the idea. Sometimes you just gotta, get up and get going. So talk to me about the structure of your book. You have it's like 8 areas, right, of focus. And I'm really interested to understand why you chose those 8 areas. Do you have you talked to anybody about this yet?
A little bit. Yeah. I was given the advice while writing the book to teach the book or kind of present it and see how it comes across in real life. And I did that through a few workshops, very roughly, as I was playing around with the idea. First of all, I just wanted to say, I didn't want to interrupt, but what a beautiful way to memorialize your sponsor while also going through your own grief. I think we're all here to share our stories, and that was a unique way of you doing so, and a healing process. I'm assuming you experienced a healing process.
Completely.
And that's.
But let me just say, I did click submit, and I felt empty because it didn't. I expected at the end of writing the book that my grief would be gone, right? And then I was like, but that's the lesson, right? The lesson is, yeah, it's like you can write about it all you want, I could heal all I want, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be there.
And that's the arrival fallacy of once I get that, or once I finish that, right? Which we all do so much. Once I have this tangible book in my hand, then, once I do the work, all the good things are going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So like magic.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that.
Of course. So in developing the structure, first of all, when I made a decision to write a book and figure out how my ramblings were going to go together, this is how I described that experience. It felt like if someone is a painter and that's their work of art, and someone has this beautiful canvas, and then someone says, okay, now can you break that up into a grid system and give me 12 squares so that other people can understand it? And I'm like, how the heck do I do that with all of these thoughts in my head? And an outline felt so limiting. And then I realized that without a foundation of a house, you can't build the house. And you need to make the blueprint. Whereas I had been doing a lot of work, but I was worried about the tiles in the bathroom when I didn't have anywhere to put them yet. And so once I developed that outline and it can always change. Once I developed that outline, it gave me the freedom to fly within those anchor points so that I could bring this into a form that other people could digest. How did I come up with those areas? I looked at points in my life, and it started out actually more as a memoir. And then once I realized it's not just about me, it's all to help other people, which I had always known. But kind of once I figured out how that applies to structuring my book, I thought I totally rewired into what will benefit the reader, what do they need to hear, and then how does my story weave into that? And so I thought about these. It's so hard to put things in categories because everything overlaps. But I needed some kind of foundation for people to follow, some kind of framework. And I just started figuring out the different stages that I had gone through at different times. And there's 8 stages because 8 is the symbol, you move it sideways and it's the symbol for infinity. And I think we're all always looping through and revisiting, and, healing isn't linear. So while there is this framework and I came up with these categories and pillars, it's still very fluid for me. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. And the 8 areas are like 1 is like notice, 2 is allow, 3 is shed, 4 is unlock, 5 is stabilize, 6 is leap, evolve, ascend, infinity. Right? For an epilogue anyway. So in this, for purposes like under, I think under shed, I don't know if it was shed, where you had, I loved it. You were like talking about like, what was the thing about a snake? Like you had, like one of the quotes in there. Oh, let me find it here. Hopefully you only have one word in here. Yeah, snakes. Where is it? Snakes don't sit in shame, dwelling on how they attracted certain parasites or why a layer of skin no longer fits. Right? I just thought, and it was really perfect in terms of, I think, that area, because it's like, you were talking about like getting on with the idea of change, right? Like getting on with the idea of like shedding your old life and building a new one. And you're right, it does have like that memoir vibe, but like I said, it also goes like at the end of each thing, at the end of each chapter anyway, you have kind of like these like things to focus on, and you're giving like a lot of the same things that like I tried to do, which was like daily challenge, right? But you give it like about it's more contextual and stuff like that. So, and did you do those things that you're talking about? Like, is that the reason why you put those things in there? That kind of like that almost like a here's the actionable steps that you might want to consider kind of a thing. Is that why you put those things in there?
Absolutely. It was like, here's the blueprint. And not that I might not do all of those things every day, but I've at least attempted and found value in all of those things. And guess what? My research brain also has the clinical knowledge to prove it as well, which I did that because I wanted to find this balance between spiritual and literal science, because I think sometimes that resonates with people more. So they might not understand when I say I had this moment and I looked in the mirror and something entered my mind that I call grace or the universe, but they can understand that Maslow's hierarchy of needs dictate X, Y, Z. So absolutely. It was all mostly driven from my personal experience and that experiment that I decided on day one I was just going to try and test some of these hypotheses and see what works and what doesn't.
So, for instance, like at the end of I think the chapter we were just talking about, it was like, this is like some of the questions and we call them like spirit steps is what you call them. It says, what is weighing you down? Holding you back? What constrains your energy and keeps you from becoming more alive? Each time you shed a layer, you add energy to your life because you are revealing hidden pieces of yourself that were imprisoned and suffocated by all these skins. It was, again, the snake's metaphor is wonderful. So what in your life is no longer serving you? And these are and again, you even go down and talk about like habits and routine and, you talk about things. And I mean, you just kind of go down like a lot of the stuff that is like, I mean, very highlightable, very journalable. Is that a word? You know what I mean? Yeah. So 2 more times and it'll be a word. So that's the idea. It's like, we want to make sure that like, we're one of the things I think you even said at the beginning of your book was like talking about like denial and like self-reflection or how did it go? I don't know exactly what you said. Something was like a key to denial. What was it? Something?
What? Yeah, because I said this is the antidote to denial. Probably self-awareness, self-exploration.
Yeah. Self-exploration. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And that's what these questions are doing to a lot of to that. And I think it's really important that we have in our lives people who are challenging us, whether it be an author that we've read or a person that we have. Like if we don't have that challenge, then we're not going to dig deeper. We're not going to be reflective and to push for more. So talking about that, who in your life helped you to do this? I mean, did you get a sponsor? Did you I don't know, did you have some Yoda walk in and what happened? How did that work out?
I did get a sponsor.
Yeah.
That was part of it. I think that my whole life I've had different teachers enter at the right time and hold me accountable in those ways that I needed to. I just want to say really quick, a funny story to relate to how you said, being held accountable and the questions that I ask, which I do kind of push people a little bit and challenge them to maybe step out of their comfort zone. But I was at a yoga class this morning and I said hi to the teacher, good morning. And she said, oh my God, this is so weird. I'm reading your book and your voice is in my head and now I see you. And this is going to be like an intervention moment for me, And I said, have I been on your mind lately, Nicole? So I do try to challenge people a little bit and hopefully somewhat accessible way. But yeah, I don't know that there was one person that really held me accountable. I think we're all our own worst critic. And so I tried to start, again, testing things and feeling and realizing that I had to put some structure around it in order to follow through. We either have excuses or we have results. And I was at a point where I was finally ready to get those results and stop making excuses. So I think there were a lot of people, my sponsor definitely being one of them.
Mm-hmm. And so are you still going to meetings? Do you still go to
Yeah.
You do? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is it something that is that a part? Because really, you don't get that from the book, which I think is wonderful. By the way, like I was like, is she or is she not in this program? You know, so it's like, which is great. It's wonderful. I enjoy that you kept me guessing. But I also by all the slogans that I picked up throughout the whole thing, I'm like, yeah, she's definitely a program. so I could hear that come through, and I think that's a wonderful. So I think that your book will have much wider appeal, by the way, just because it is not like seriously focused in 12-step, and I think that it's really again, when you talk about it, it's like not only is it spiritual, but it's clinical, right? And then you get that in the back of the book, which is crazy. Like you have like, so you want to you really want to make sure that people understand that you're like pulling out like, real clinical information, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like I don't even know what section it's in, right? It's at the epilogue.
Explore.
Yeah, exactly. So you have like and then a bibliography of everything that you've gone through, like research and resources, and all these other types of things. So, which is super like awesome that you like put all that stuff together, and and it's because you sit there and read the stuff and you talk about like, oh yeah, I'm a very clinical oriented person, and like I really like this evidence based, but I'm also very spiritual, which is cool. And then I'm like, so I relate to both. I mean, I'm totally like of the same mindset, and so. But to see it all like, oh yeah, she didn't just say that. It wasn't just bullshit. She actually put it at the back of the book. And so you have like links to resources, additional reading, like and your explanations of why you pulled out those clinical, behaviors and pattern, whatever, modalities, because that's something that you believe and have applied. Right, which is beautiful stuff to see because it's like, and you're trying to explain concepts that are much deeper in more of a layman's terms, which I think for the rest of us we get, right? So talk to me about this, which is you went back to school. Was this before sobriety or after sobriety that you really started to get more educated? Like, how did that work?
It was right around the time of sobriety. I think I might not have been sober when I registered for school, but I was in that space of learning and trying to figure things out for myself. And what influenced the degree that I got is actually health promotion and nutrition education. And what influenced that is one of the ways I was trying to fix myself, if you will. Mm-hmm. At the time, that's how I would have articulated it, was through diet. I was having a lot of physical problems and mental problems, and that wasn't and still isn't very commonly discussed of how maybe the things I'm eating could be affecting my mental state. That's just not, I mean, I've been in institutions where people are drinking Coke and coffee at night, yet they've tried 10 different medications for sleep and none of them are working. And have you
thought about?
Right, and they have, and that wasn't my place to say, but guess what? Their doctors hadn't thought about it either or mentioned it, right? Yeah. We're selling it at the hospital, not even selling it, it was free. They have coffee, they serve coffee at night. So those kinds of things, I was like, the doctors aren't helping me right now in that way. What are some natural ways that I can figure it out? And just to be fully transparent, I am very much a believer in Western medicine's application of things. I myself am still on medications psychiatrically. So it's always a blend for me. It's not all or nothing, but how can I use natural ways in my life every day to help this? So the degree was kind of built on that and bridging that gap that I didn't really understand that how food was affecting my body.
Yeah, I just was researching, trying to find people, trying to find a couple of docs to come on, and I found a doctor who was talking about the Spire model. I forget his name exactly, Dr. Tandahar or whatever, and he comes up. So the Spire model for him was like spiritual, physical, which would be again health, diet, those types of things, intellectual, relational, and emotional. Right, like so. This is like a Spire model, and so it really talks about like
that.
overall well-being and wellness and this kind of stuff, and those things really interest me because I do know, like for myself, and it's something that we don't talk about enough in recovery. We really don't talk about like going for a walk. Like we'll sit in meetings and we'll hear somebody bitch about God only knows what or whatever, and just be on the edge of their insanity, and then and then nobody talks about like, oh, did you go for did you exercise today, did you eat well, did you sleep right, and I've heard it and said in meetings before too, though, which is funny, only places that you hear this shit, but you don't hear it in a hospital, but you're hearing it in a meeting, which is like, hey, just because they're serving coffee doesn't mean you have to have it, right? It's like, oh shit, like it never occurred to me at 9:00 meeting that I don't have to have another cup, right? I can just have some water and then go home. Go figure. But we addicts and alcoholics, we love our substances.
Oh,
doesn't matter what they are.
Yeah. And that actually, I was a little bit resistant to the program at the beginning, which I did a lot of clinical research on as well, and was like, why aren't we talking about other things? I
modern day shit.
Right. I of course knew better than the millions of people who have recovered in AA and thought, how is this working when we're not addressing? I thought of a way to revamp the whole program, and so what I had to do with that is realize that AA is for alcoholism, and that I can also apply other things in my life.
Yeah, it's
for the other things.
I try to explain to people like it's a launching pad, right? It's a place where you go, and it's kind of like when you talk about the hero's journey, right? There's like it's like there's like that place where you go and before you start your adventure, it's basically like that gathering place, right? It's like, and then from there all these ships are leaving port, like they're all going somewhere, right? And so that's where the story begins for a lot of people, I think, and it's a launching pad. You can go anywhere you want to go from there as long as you hit that ground in a different way. But the fact is like, it's not all things for everybody all the time. It is like, there are things that you need differently versus somebody else needs differently, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, but it's up to you. That's the best part, right? It's like so that it's up to you to go chase those things down. I think A is a really good place for contemplation, for understanding your condition as it relates to alcoholism. But, it's, if that's where you go and that's all you want to do, good for you, right? You can rest there and stay there all you like, but that's not where I want my story to end. That's where I wanted it to begin.
Correct.
Yeah, and I was just like, so I'd see dudes like making it their entire lives, and I'm like, I don't think I'm going to do that. So but in terms of growth, sobriety, recovery, and outside of the rooms, that kind of stuff, that's where I think that it's all needed. Right, it's all there, very much.
Yeah, and I couldn't have done it without that launching pad.
So when you go back to school, I mean, what inspires you to go back to school? Is it just that you're like learning? And by the way, for me, I got into learning beyond. I've read so many more books and like so many more interests. Like I feel like. It's wonderful and it's great, but then I was like, damn it, I should have actually enrolled in a college and then I would have got some degrees out of this shit. Right. But I didn't. I just sucked in the next thing that came, But I think the knowledge is more useful for me. But either way, I don't think the paper is really going to make any difference about what I know. So, but. What prompted you to go in and like really get more? I mean, like you say, it's like you're an adjunct professor, et cetera, et cetera. Like what prompted all that behavior?
I love learning. I would go to school forever if I could get paid for it instead of adding to my student loans. So professional student is what my dad always calls me. Yeah. And so for me, looking back, I think my day job at the time was kind of doing a little bit of damage to my brain where I felt like I wasn't growing and I needed to do something else to fill my soul. And like I said, like I've said before, and I always say, I couldn't have articulated it at the time that way, but that's what I think I was attempting to do with school. And something that's always fascinated me is the gap between knowledge and change, because we all know, well, most of us know or have a general concept of what is healthy and what is not. We all know that we're supposed to eat more there's a lot of different things, but among them all typically is more vegetables. Okay, that's a good framework. There's so much literature out there.
Water.
That water and vegetables, along with other things, but like water and vegetables, we all kind of know and have known for a long time. Clinical studies and anecdotal research have proven that is good for us. However, we still have a big problem with that. So what's happening between the knowledge and behavior that we struggle with? And that's what, through this book and through a lot of other things I do in my life, is around behavior change, because that's where rubber meets the road. And so that's what really fascinated me about this health promotion degree and nutrition education, was because how do you get them to do it? You know?
Yeah, we know it, but how do we
right,
like the human condition to get their butt off the couch, or to
exactly
to open the vegetable drawer versus the donuts in the pantry? Like, you know, I get that it's a little easier to grab a donut, but you know how like, you know, we have to. How do you change the behavior? Because how do you I don't know if you convince them as much as you can, but I don't know if that's a word for it. But how do you inspire somebody to take care of their own health? You know, which is a total different framework. And again, I think for you, it's like, it's one thing. It's like you're coming from recovery. You understand the difference, right? You know, you see those things. And, you know, and I think in some ways we're really lucky as addicts and alcoholics, because we do have that contrast. Like, we understand what it's like. I know what it's like to shit blood, and that's scary, right? So how do I so then how do I live my life today to where I'm like, okay, like, hey, take care of your gut a little bit better, you know, or whatever. You know, it's like, because I certainly fucked it up for many years. So, you know, so we have that contrast, and we have that, like, I guess we have that knowledge to know that, you know, we can be doing this better, or that we need to anyway. So, but that's why I say we're really lucky. And then, but average people, by the way, they're just going to, you know, they don't have the contrast like that. They don't have that, like, that bottom moment of like, oh shit, I was shitting blood for, you know, on and off for a year and a half. How is that possible? Right. You know, so, so they just continue to eat the donuts because they don't care. Right. Or they don't know any better, you know? So I guess, it is a struggle, but then, and I guess that's the other thing, is because you see it in yourself, and you see the change in yourself and your behaviors and your change. Right. Like, you know, I think that's the one thing you want to give to other people, because you see the benefit yourself. Right. So I guess that's the question is, so what would you tell because our podcast is a lot of, you know, a lot of new people, right? You know, we may have a let's say a small listenership every week, but it turns over pretty quickly, right? You know, and so and there's reasons why, right? You know, because you know, they want to change, they want to get there, they want to initiate that level of change, but they just don't know how. What would you tell somebody who's just starting out to say, like, let's just say they're trying to shed their skin, right? Like, how would you tell them to begin? Like, what would be the top 2-3 things that they should be thinking about or doing?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, as far as the mindset, I'd go back to that experiment mentality of, first of all, having a beginner's mind of, let me just try something different. Let me try learning from somebody else, you know, which was a really hard, difficult concept for me because I knew everything. Yeah, so
as a note to that, like, any fool can learn from their own mistakes, but it's the wise person who chooses to learn from others. So I love that statement. It's a really good thing to hold in your back pocket there.
Yeah. Well, and I was told a sick brain can't heal a sick brain. So
Einstein, actually.
was it? Yeah. Yeah. So oddly enough, I had to look to others, even though I just wanted to sit in my room with my big book and my highlighter and do it all myself. The fellowship is really so that's one thing, I guess, having a beginner's mind and looking at it as an experiment and trying new things. And I mean, wrapped into that is learning from others. I think building that awareness, and I say this in my book, maybe you aren't at the point of trying any tangible new things, but start observing things within and without from a point of neutrality as much as you can, as little judgment as possible. Going back to the snake thing, they don't sit in shame. We're the only animal that does that. We're the only animal that sits in shame and guilt and punishes ourselves over and over for the same crime. It's not a thing in the other part of the animal kingdom, right? So just notice what's going on.
My brain is terrible. All I think of is there's a bunch of dolphins right now sitting in the bottom of the ocean in a ring of chairs, and they're all bemoaning.
Yes.
Like, you know. Yes. Like there exists. I'm like, it just doesn't happen. But I just thought it was really funny visual. Like, oh yeah, great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Walt Whitman taught me a lot about that. You know, our difference between the animals and when you observe them and what they're doing are the things that matter. So yeah, exactly. Kind of taking yourself out of it, taking the drama out of it, and just observing as much as you can. And then using that to inform maybe what you do next. So I think those, I know I'm trying to break them up into two concepts, but I think within there, I think there's a lot that can come out of that. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good advice. So, I think that's it. I think we've hit the hour. That's awesome. So I just do want to say, for those listening that, if you are looking for a good, solid read and guidance and some navigation or stepping stones and how you might approach your path to healing, recovery, even your own spirituality, I think, your book, Lindsay, is really designed to help somebody, kind of start up their journey, right? I think it's, and again, it's like I said, it's for the misfits, the rebels, the crazy ones, the ones who definitely have felt like out of place and misguided. And I think that it totally, which by the way, I have many other quotes that I was going to read, but either way, there's Robin Williams, like you're only given a little spark of madness, you mustn't lose it, right? Because it also reminded me that, when I read your stuff, that of course, madness, as you know, is like gravity. All it takes is a little push, and that's from the Joker.
Oh, I love that. I love a good villain origin.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, my favorite, which has always been my favorite, you're entirely bonkers, but I'll tell you a secret. All the best people are.
Alice in Wonderland.
Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what you remind me of. And so, by the way, if you are interested out there in podcast land, please go, purchase her book. Again, all this stuff will be in the show notes, and we'll have links to, her website as well. So by all means, go check it out. And then what do you say? What is your catchphrase? If you had, I shouldn't even say this. What would you put on your tombstone?
Trust your truth.
Oh, that's great.
Even though I love Charles Bukowski's "Don't Try," but that's a whole nother.
That's a whole nother poem.
We could go into.
I've been into that philosophy as well, so I totally understand. Okay, so and I say, stay active, stay sober, and don't forget that there are meetings. If you go to thesmallbow.com, there are about 5 to 6 meetings there that you can choose from with all varying degrees of interest. So by all means, go to thesmallbow.com and you can have an online meeting there if you really need one. But until then, see ya. Soberpod.com.
It was a sight to see them. Breakfast with Sprite and Seagrams. Wrestling with my vices, exercising my demons. My blessings were blocked, so I never got the message. I'm stressing, I'm only 12 steps from an exit. Regret it, because my imperfections were perfected. I ain't run from it, I accept it and rep it. It's a badge to me, good stories come from a tragedy. And when you survive, the glory will come in Act 3. The wait's over, 366 days sober. Morning affirmations that can start the day for you. Use my favorite bookmark for a placeholder. Finish when the day's over. Okay. Yeah, sober pod, keep it authentic, no facades. If it's real, then you know it's ours. Welcome.